Welcome to what I think is the web's best TypeScript resource. TypeScript is an amazing programming language that's built right on top of JavaScript syntax, and it only continues to get more and more popular each year. It makes development smoother, safer, and just a bit more enjoyable. And if you haven't learned it yet, it is a very good time to start. Since 2017, TypeScript has doubled in popularity every year, and it continues to grow. It's now one of the top 3 most popular languages alongside the likes of heavy hitters like Python and JavaScript, so it's quickly becoming a must-have skill. This course starts at the very beginning. You don't have to have any previous TypeScript experience, and we'll build up your skills one piece at a time to make you a complete TypeScript developer. From the very basic types, enums, tuples, interfaces, classes, generics, to customizing the compiler and common TypeScript workflows, you'll even learn how to use TypeScript with Webpack and TypeScript with React, though you don't have to know those skills to take the course. My name is Colt Steele. I'll be your instructor in the course. I'm a developer, a teacher who's taught thousands of students in person, as well as millions online. I have students working at pretty much every big company you can think of. But none of that really matters. What I'm most proud of is how I try and design my courses. I try to make them as engaging as possible. I try and keep you not just alive, but maybe interested in the topics I'm covering. So I work really hard to add exercises and quizzes to keep you on your toes and keep you awake. TypeScript is not only one of the fastest growing languages, it is also one of the most loved languages by developers. On all the surveys, it always comes out at the top. So if you're interested in learning more about the course, check out the description, watch some free preview videos, and then consider signing up. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, welcome to the course. Thanks for joining me. This is a course on TypeScript. Not that you could tell from that image. It looks cool, but that's pretty much it. Here is the actual TypeScript logo. We are going to be covering the ins and outs of TypeScript throughout this course, but I'm going to start with a very brief intro just to the course and to the section, and for now, an intro to me. So my name is Colt. I'm your instructor. I'm a developer. I'm a teacher. I've been leading courses in person for a long time and then also online. I think that's all I need to say. You can read my bio if you really care, but I wouldn't waste your time. It's poorly written and very boring. So this course is broken up into a bunch of different sections or modules, whatever you want to call them. And all of these in green that I've highlighted have to do with TypeScript itself. They're like the core of this class. If you want to learn TypeScript, you definitely need to make it through most of those sections. But then there's 3 of them that I've highlighted in red here, or pink, to indicate that they are not critical. They are not part of TypeScript necessarily, or at least the core, so you may or may not want to complete them. The first one here, JS classes, is going to be a recap or a very quick crash course to JavaScript class syntax in case you're not familiar with things like class fields or private fields or constructors or super, different concepts that have to do with classes in JavaScript. You can check out that section so that we're all on the same page before we get to the TypeScript classes. And then the Webpack plus TypeScript and React plus TypeScript sections are just what they sound like. I'm going to show you how to integrate TypeScript into Webpack, how to integrate TypeScript into React. But if you don't know React, don't waste your time on that section. And if you don't care about Webpack, don't waste your time on that section. They have to do with TypeScript because we're using TypeScript, but we're not going to learn anything new about TypeScript itself. This is the core of the course and what I would hope you would focus on. All right, so that's it for this video. Once again, welcome. Thank you for joining me. And here is our lovely course image that has nothing to do with TypeScript. Okay, I'll keep this super short. I just need to say something very important about this course in particular. There's a prerequisite. You really are not going to get anything out of this course at all. It will be a waste of your time, your effort, if you don't have some foundational JavaScript knowledge. TypeScript builds on top of JavaScript. If you don't know JavaScript, you're going to have a rough time. So it's not too late to get a refund. With that said, you do not need to be a JavaScript expert at all. There are more and more people learning TypeScript more than ever who are beginners. You don't have to be an advanced JavaScript user. With that said, here are some of the concepts that I would expect you or assume that you'll know in JavaScript as a student in this course. You should be able to write JavaScript variables, arrays, objects, functions, conditionals, if, else, and so on, and loops. And then on the right are the things I do not assume that you know. like JavaScript classes. We're going to use those throughout TypeScript towards the end of this course, but I have a refresher/intro to the class syntax, so you don't need to know that. You don't need to be a master of manipulating the DOM, and you definitely do not need to know React. I also didn't put Webpack on here, but that's another skill that we have a section on Webpack with TypeScript. We have a section on React with TypeScript, but you don't need to do that section, first of all. It's just one little add-on at the end of the course. So those are not requirements. But everything on the left, variables, functions, arrays, objects, conditionals, loops, are definitely things you need to be familiar with. And like I said, I'm not joking. It is not too late to get a refund if you need one. You will not get much out of this course if you don't know the basics of JavaScript. Okay, I just had to get that part out of the way. It's over with. Now we can move on. So we made it through all the intro to the course. Welcome. My name is Cole. Here's a prerequisites type of content. Now we can start talking about TypeScript. And I think a pretty good place to start is what exactly is TypeScript. To help answer that, we actually need to talk a little bit about JavaScript and some of its quirks, shortcomings, oddities, weirdness. If you've spent any time with JavaScript, you know that it's a little bit of a weird programming language. And that largely has to do with its development and its original goals. We'll get to that in a moment. But the fact that we can do things like multiply null times a number and not get an error, or multiply undefined times a number and not get an error, we get something different. We get not a number, whereas null times a number is a number. It's the number 0. Or even something like this, where I've got an object shape. It has a width and a height. And there's nothing wrong with me trying to access a property that doesn't exist. Shape.height, T and H swapped instead of height, that doesn't exist in the property or in the object, but I don't get an error. JavaScript just sort of silently says, that's undefined. It doesn't throw in any errors. It doesn't complain. And that tiny little issue can ruin a lot of code bases, or at least cause a lot of headaches, unexpected undefineds that you're not handling. So just a handful of small examples. They don't seem like much, but these things can add up. Not to mention the fact that there are many other quirks in JavaScript. And these quirks are there because basically JavaScript was never intended to be the ubiquitous programming language that it is today. It started its life as this little tiny 2-week project. It was created in a matter of weeks to add some simple scripting capabilities to browsers. Maybe write a couple of lines here or there. But at the time, nobody foresaw it becoming the behemoth that it is today, where a modern application in the browser might be 99% JavaScript, tens of thousands of lines potentially, with a little bit of HTML and CSS sprinkled in. So any of the issues and the quirks that started out in the language, they're still here. We're still dealing with them. So over the years, browsers and developers have responded. They've tried to improve JavaScript by basically adding in some enhancements, adding some new functionality, but never really being able to change the language itself, right? It's still JavaScript. You put some duct tape on it, and this is what we're dealing with today. Modern JavaScript. This is maybe a bit harsh on JavaScript, but the point is that there's been fixes, there's been enhancements, but at the end of the day, it is still an imperfect language, especially if you're writing 10,000 lines of code instead of a dozen lines. Those issues just become amplified. So this is where TypeScript comes in. TypeScript is a language that is built on top of JavaScript with the purpose of helping us avoid the common pitfalls and bugs that arise in JavaScript. And it seeks to improve the experience of writing JavaScript. And the way that it does that is by adding types. Now, in the next video, we'll talk more about types, but what you should know for now is that we've got JavaScript, the entire language of JavaScript, and then we have TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript, meaning that all JavaScript code is considered valid TypeScript. The difference is that TypeScript adds on this type system. It adds in these special checks, these special enhancements to the JavaScript syntax that make it a much better development experience and hopefully help us avoid bugs. So in the next video, we'll talk more about this type system. Okay, so we've established the pretty obvious point that there are types in TypeScript. There's a lot of types. We're going to dive into them. There's even more than I've listed out here. We're going to learn about them throughout the course. But the first thing I want to talk about is where we apply types in our TypeScript code. There's a lot of different situations ranging from things like functions. So we can tell TypeScript this particular function needs to return a Boolean. or an array of booleans, or a string. We can also say this particular function accepts 2 numbers as arguments and then returns a number. We can get detailed about the patterns, the shapes of objects. We can say this object must have a particular property called colors, and it must be set to some array of strings. Or we can do something really simple, which is where we're going to start. We can tell TypeScript the type of a variable. We can tell it this variable called movie title is a string. And that's what we're going to learn how to do in this video. It's very straightforward. We can declare the type of a variable using a type annotation. That's a term. It's pretty straightforward. After a variable name, we write a colon and then a type. And the first type we're looking at is string. So this right here, const myAwesomeVariable colon string, is telling TypeScript this is a string variable called myAwesomeVariable, and then we set it equal to soAwesome. So the syntax here, again, is that we have the type on the left side of the equals sign. So we have our variable declaration, whether it's let or const or var, the name of the variable, and then the colon, and then the type. And that could be number, boolean, string, undefined, whatever we want, but for now it's going to be string. So strings just represent text, just like they do in JavaScript, nothing fancy there. The only thing I want to call your attention to is that it's all lowercase. So no capital S for string, lowercase s. So let's try it. We're starting simple. I know this is not mind-blowing. I'm going to make a new file in VS Code. I'll just call it variables.ts for TypeScript. And then in here, I'll make my first variable. Let's go with movie title. And I'm going to make that a string variable. And we're going to see shortly that this is actually not necessary all the time or even most of the time, but we've got to start somewhere. So movie title, colon, string, and then I'm going to set it equal to something like my favorite movie, Amadeus. If you've taken any of my other courses, you know I really like that movie and probably talk about it too much. Okay, so now we have this movie title variable, and if I just hover over its name, my editor says that's a string. You can see right there, it's telling me that thing, movie title, it's a string. So I can change it to be another string, like another movie, Arrival, no problem. But as soon as I do something illegal, which is totally valid in JavaScript, like changing it to a number, well, TypeScript is going to complain. It highlights there, that ugly red underline, very scary. It says type number is not assignable to type string, right? We said this is a string. Why would we be changing it to a number? And that's all that I really want to show you in this video. We make a variable, we give it a type using the colon followed by a type like string, and then TypeScript pays attention to that, and it will call us on anything we do that is not allowed. Additionally, because it knows that it's a string, it will complain to me if I try and use some method that strings don't have or some property. For example, let's say I'm coming from the world of Python, where there's an upper method on strings. Well, just auto-corrected for me. Upper doesn't exist. And it's going to highlight that for me and say, that doesn't exist on type string. You said this is a string. TypeScript knows what's on strings, what they have available. And upper is not one of those. But to uppercase is. And if I had some slight typo, it would notice that and probably suggest to me, you can see right there, it suggests, did you mean to uppercase with an upper U? Uppercase U. Okay, so type annotations, we've got to start somewhere. That's our first type, string. Next, we'll talk about some other types. Next up, we've got a type that is unique to TypeScript. It doesn't exist in JavaScript. It is the any type. It does what it sounds like. It allows you to use any type. It's an escape hatch, a catch-all. It doesn't do any of the type checking that we associate with TypeScript. It kind of defeats the purpose of TypeScript. So you generally don't want to use it. There are times you'll encounter it, of course. You need to work with it. So we have to talk about it. ANY, all lowercase. If I manually set some variable to any, which I can do, it's just generally not a great idea unless you have no choice. Let's go with let thing of any type, and I'll set it equal to a string to start. Well, now I can change it to be a number, and I can change it to a Boolean, and I can change it to an array if I wanted to. I can change it to anything. And beyond that, I can call it as a function. TypeScript's not going to complain to me. I can access some method that doesn't exist on thing, like to uppercase Well, that doesn't exist on thing. Thing is set to false. There is no Boolean method to uppercase. But if I instead had set this, to be, let's just do it again down here, let thing of type string, or even, I won't even say string, I'll just use the implicit. Now, if I tried to call thing as a function, TypeScript is going to stop me in my tracks and say, what are you doing? That's not callable, that's a string, you can't do that. And if I try and, access some method that doesn't exist on there, well, it's auto-completing for me, but this method right here, it complains. So by using the any type, all those extra checks along the way are gone. So we don't want to use it most of the time, but we will deal with it. We will encounter it. And I'll show you a situation where we encounter it in the very next video. Okay,